Boom, here we go. Let's get right to the right page. All right, we got episode 21 of GBG. Let's bring that down a little bit. All right. All right, folks. Episode 21 of GBG, and the first one, I think, no, that's official. They'll also be on the All Access Sports Network. So here's the thing. We had a little boo-boo earlier. Don't know how I'm going to recover. I'll just explain it to you. So I was, for those of you who know me, know that I enjoy my food a little bit on the caliente side. GBG likes his food a little spicy. So I was making myself, it's actually in the oven right now. I'm timing this perfectly. So I was making chicken and rice. Got the rice with the cream of chicken soup in one pan, and I got the chicken breast in another pan. And what I do is I take this GBG recipe of extremely hot sauce. It includes Carolina Reaper sauce, and it includes Mike Reeves' favorite, sriracha, along with some other hot sauce. And what I do is I mix that with a little bit of water, boil it, get out my meat injector, inject the old chicken breast with some of that hot sauce, and then I let it bathe in it in the other pan as I cook it. So here's what GBG did, folks. As I was injecting it, I punctured my finger, and just real little, started to bleed a little bit, and in true idiot fashion, I went like this to quickly stop the bleeding. Yeah, that's the same hand that I was holding on to with raw chicken, and didn't have a chance to quickly, didn't think to myself, hey, Greg, why don't you let yourself bleed a little bit? It's just a little puncture wound, and wash your hands first. It was natural reaction. So if I get sick in the next couple of days, no worries, folks. I won't have the COVID. I'll just have salmonella. So it is what it is. I'll get over it in a few days. Life goes on. All right. So we're over that. Hopefully everyone was able to get through that unscathed. Appreciate all your thoughts and prayers. Send them my way. I think I'll live, though. All right, sports talkers, this week we're just concluded week 4 of the NFL season, or week 3 for the Tennessee Titans and the Pittsburgh Steelers, because the Tennessee Titans had a rash of COVID outbreaks earlier last week, and they had to kind of suspend all practices, and then the game wasn't allowed to be played, so they're going to make it up. And the thing is they're going to be allowed to make it up. Weeks 7 and 8, they're going to shuffle some things around. They only have to inconvenience one other team, that being the Baltimore Ravens, to switch games around so they can play those games and then match up bye weeks. I'm going to get into a lot of that stuff down the road. The other sports talker I wanted to get into was last night in the Chiefs New England Patriots game. Cam Newton didn't play because on Saturday he tested positive for the Rona, and he didn't travel with the team, and they went through all these precautions, et cetera, et cetera. These things happen, folks. You know what? I think that we got to count our lucky football stars that only one game was postponed. Once again, I'll get in that in a little bit, but what I really admire on this whole thing is the way that the NFL was able to handle it. And your personal view towards the way politicians, our government, or any individual down the road deals with COVID is a non-issue in what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is the NFL is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and the public's perception of how they run their organization is extremely important. And I don't honestly think they could have handled what they did any better. When Mike, let's see what Mike has to say. Let's interrupt this. Let's interrupt my broadcast. When are you getting your new studio in Beijing? I don't know what that means. Maybe, I don't know. And then now Mike's got another comment. Is that a polo shirt? Yes, actually, it is a wrong side. Hugo Boss. Sure. Back in the day, when I'll just break away from the norm here for a second. And back in the day, about 10, 15, 20 years ago, I was big, still am, big Phil Mickelson fan. Phil Mickelson used to be sponsored by Hugo Boss. He used to wear Hugo Boss shirts all the time. So I bought this shirt. For those of you who know who Hugo Boss is, the brand name, you're probably thinking to yourself, wow, GBG, 20 years ago, you were in college. You must have been bringing in the cheddar to afford a Hugo Boss shirt, to be able to afford a Hugo Boss shirt. Yes, folks. No, that's not the case. I went on eBay. I got this for like $20 20 years ago. I just cracked it out today because it's nice outside. Wore this to work today. So that's the sports talkers. Oh, Beijing. Okay, Beijing where I'm moving. Yeah, moving up north. The kids got a place with their mom. Their mom and her boyfriend bought a place up on the north end of the cities. So I'm picking up my life, moving up to the north side of the cities. So Mike, I apologize. But to be honest with you, Mike, I know that this is a big concern of yours. I did Google. It's going to take me roughly the same amount of time, maybe about 5 minutes longer to get from my new place to your old place because I live right off 35W, you the same. So we have that going for us. So there we go. Appreciate your concern. Moving on to you're better than that. I'll tell you who's better than that this week. Who am I going to call out for the way they either said something or did something? That is yours truly. I was like everybody else this few months ago when the NFL did their draft and the Packers drafted Jordan Love, and then with the first round pick, and then C.J. Dillon with their second round pick. I was like everyone else and thought to myself, what are they doing? They already have, one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. They already have one of the top 5 running backs in the league. And here they are filling in those spots. Well, what I didn't account for was last night. I made a joke on our fantasy football message board and said before the game started that Aaron Rodgers will throw for 350 yards and 4 touchdown passes to tight ends and wide receivers. Tight ends and running backs. No wide receivers would catch a touchdown pass. Well, he threw for 322 yards, and he did throw for 4 touchdown passes, 3 of them to a tight end and 1 of them to a running back. So I was dead on, 28 yards off. My point is that I have to learn, and we all, I think, as sports fans, in some cases, I know Houston Texans, cover your ears, you guys are the exception. We have to trust the process. Sometimes the process doesn't go the way we want it to or the way we think it should go, but it usually works out. Now there's different teams in different situations. I'll be the first to admit I've been a spoiled football fan since I was 14 years old and when the Packers got Brett Favre. Ever since then, I've been in quarterback utopia. And, 18 years ago now, I moved up to Minnesota where the Vikings fans have had to deal with the exact opposite. But what do I see out of them? They build up a different way. Now, they're not having success this year. That's obvious. But what are they going to do now that their feet are held to the fire? They're going to bring in a new coach? Quite possibly. Maybe Zimmer's time's up. Maybe he goes on to someplace else. But what are they going to do? Because they are handicapped. They are, they're handicapped. They're handcuffed to that Kirk Cousins contract. Assuming San Francisco is not going to trade to get Kirk Cousins over to them, which doesn't look like they're going to, they have to deal with Kirk Cousins for at least this year and next year. They might eat it that third year, but you know what? They have at least 2 years. So what do? My opinion is you draft a quarterback right away and you let him sit for a year. Quarterbacks that have the opportunity to sit for a year, or at least an extended amount of time, tend to be more successful. Drew Brees did it. Aaron Rodgers did it. Tom Brady did it. The greats of the greats got the opportunity to sit, to watch and see the speed and the pace of an NFL game. So I'll speak on behalf of Viking fans. Draft a quarterback, whether it's one of the top 3 we're talking about or whoever you have your eyes set on, and let them sit. You're already paying Kirk Cousins the money. And Viking fans, you need to do this for the team. You need to be patient. You need to understand that having Kirk Cousins as a quarterback isn't the answer. But let them trust let them provide the process. You might have to next year. Let's just say things go perfect and you're 8-8, but at least your quarterback will have had a year to sit, and he'll be able to follow in the footsteps of Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Steve Young, Tom Brady, all the greats that really got an opportunity to sit back and learn. All right, let's see what we have another comment here. Let's see what Dan Lenahan had to say. If you had to choose through the first 4 games, would you give the MVP to Rodgers or Wilson? I would honestly give the MVP right now to Russell Wilson, even though not just because he's a former Badger. I talk about how much I hate the Seahawks all the time. He's on record pace this year. 16 touchdown passes, I think it is, in 4 games. But that's why they don't give out the MVP after 4 weeks. I think that Aaron Rodgers is doing more with less. but right now you can't deny the numbers. And I would give it to Russell Wilson for the first quarter of the season. I'm just being honest. Moving on to the GBG Moment of Zen. All right, we're going to get off the football field here for a second. And I want to talk about a guy, Jimmy Butler. I've always had this admiration for Jimmy Butler. Yeah, he did go to Marquette in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My dad's an adjunct professor there, or was. So I kind of, over the past 20 years, whether it's Dwayne Wade or any of the other guys, I really followed them a lot more. But Jimmy Butler, what he did the other night, 2 nights ago, where he single-handedly took over the game, 40 plus points in a triple-double. I think that was like only the third time that's happened in an NBA Finals, is unbelievable. The best way to describe Jimmy Butler, and this should be a compliment to Jimmy Butler and a compliment to Kobe Bryant, is he's the poor man's Kobe Bryant. He's never going to be in the conversation for the top 5 greatest players of all time, like you always hear. Kobe Bryant in that discussion. Jimmy Butler is not going to be in that conversation, but what Jimmy Butler does, as well as any player that I can remember, and I'm of an advanced age, is Jimmy Butler demands the best out of his teammates. If you're not giving 110%, Jimmy Butler doesn't want you on his team. That's why he worked out so well with Tibbs. And honestly, I believe that's why he didn't work out in Minnesota. Not that the players were lazy, but they just weren't used to a head coach and a star player demanding that much of them. It was the same thing for Kobe. Going back even further, Michael Jordan was the same way. But Jimmy Butler, I believe, is a poor man's Kobe Bryant. He demands the greatest out of his players, and he gets it. You saw what happened on Sunday night. We'll see what happens here in a little bit when they play again. But I admire that amount of effort that he puts in to just any one single game. And Tyler Hero, no one's ever heard of him, and he's from Wisconsin, from Milwaukee. I never heard of the guy before, and he's lighting up in the NBA, in the playoffs. It's because Jimmy Butler demands the best out of his teammates, and I can admire that. I want to see what happens tonight. I'm going to watch the game tonight after I watch Mike and Matt join in Triple Shot Sports Podcast. They're going to go on here, I think at 7 o'clock Central Time. They're going to go over their top 10 lists for power rankings. I'm going to watch that. Then I'm going to watch the game. I don't think the game starts till 8 anyway. But my point is that I really admire the way Jimmy Butler's playing. And yeah, he's not the MVP. He's not going to win the MVP unless they end up winning playoffs. He'll definitely win. But you got to admire that amount of effort out of a player who, for all intents and purposes, is, in that, I would put him 8 to 14 range as far as best players in the game, maybe top 5 now. But, I really admire the attitude and the work ethic. So outside the arena. So last week, and I promised I'd get back to this, last week when the Tennessee Titans had their big outbreak and all the players were diagnosed and they tested positive for the COVID, and a lot of the team personnel, things like that, they started isolating. They were worried about the Minnesota Vikings because the Minnesota Vikings were the team that had most recently played them the day before. And the Minnesota Vikings had 0 positive cases. Now, I can be sarcastic and I can say, well, it's probably because they didn't test them. That's just not true. But what I did learn last week as I was listening to the radio when they had on, I think it was like the information director or sports director for the Vikings, working closely with the medical staff of the Vikings. They were talking about all of the precautions they do in these cases. They obviously shut down practice, kept everyone isolated, did individual testing on all these guys, but they had the plan in place when these guys came back to practice. They were all wearing wristbands. They look like watches that tells, the computer where these guys are at what time, who are they within proximity of. And these guys have to get tested throughout. They have to monitor what they eat, who they're around. They try to keep guys isolated from each other that don't need to be around each other. In other words, if the wide receivers don't need to be near the defensive linemen, they don't. They keep them away from each other. My point is the amount of precautions that I heard that the Vikings were going to take that every NFL team is doing is just unbelievable. Like I said, I don't want to change anyone's mind on how you feel about COVID or how you feel about how the way the government is handling things or your local politicians or whatever the case is. All I'm speaking about is what this multi-billion-dollar industry is doing to save their product. They know that it was an uphill climb. Now, like I said earlier in the show, it's pretty fortunate right now that they were able to change around just one game. The Titans and the Steelers got a bye week last week when they really didn't intend on having it until week 7 and week 8, respectively. But now they have to have it early. You know what? That's just the state of the game. I'm old enough to remember the first year that the Cleveland Browns came into the league. I believe that was 1999. I don't have the notes in front of me. I just thought of this as I was saying this. They actually had an odd number of teams, which means that every week of the NFL season, a team had to have a bye week, which means that someone started off the season on a bye week. If I remember correctly, and I think I do, it was the Philadelphia Eagles that started off the season on a bye week. It is what it is. Everyone has to play under the same deal. Sorry, Tennessee Titans, or more importantly, sorry, Pittsburgh Steelers, that your bye week came this early. This week is the Packers and the Lions bye week. People are going to have bye weeks at unfortunate times. People are going to have bye weeks. You can find a positive or a negative in anything. As a Packer fan, I can say right now, the positive is that right now we have Alan Lazard and Devontae Adams, Kinsley, a bunch of other guys that are on the bench. They're hurt. This bye week couldn't come at a better time. Great. That's the Packer fan in me. Now, on the other side of the coin is it's going to suck when we're at about week 14, 15, 16 in the NFL season, and our bye week is so long ago that these guys are exhausted. So what the schedule is when it comes out, and if it changes on you, you know what? You're a professional. You're a grown man. You can make adjustments. So what we have to do as NFL fans is just count our blessings, because you know what's going to start happening now that teams like the Packers and the Lions and the Steelers and the Titans have already had their bye week. We're going to come across situations where they can't just fall back on a bye week. If you are planning right now your Super Bowl party for the day it's designed on the calendar, you might want to put that in pencil. I have a very strong feeling that here's what's going to happen. I have a feeling that what they're going to do is they're going to have to have an 18th week of the season. And that's going to happen because all of these random games that are going to happen that, they can't fit in, they're going to have to push it back to after week 17, which is going to push the playoffs all the way back. But that would still keep the Super Bowl on the same date, because what they would do with the Super Bowl is they wouldn't have the extra week. The extra week is pomp and circumstance for, all the fans, all that. Well, if they're not even fans at games, you don't need a second week. And I think that they'll be so relieved just to get the season over with. Now, if they have to do it for a second week, well, yeah, they can push the Super Bowl back. There's nothing else going on. You can take the state, they're playing in Tampa Bay. You can just push it back a week. It's going to be okay. But the NFL has made it very clear that they're going to do everything they can to get this season through and get it done in a relatively, same amount of time. I give them a lot of credit. So that's my outside the arena. Now let's move on to the GBG challenge. Now, I'm going to just lay it all out there right now. Now, before I get into that, got another comment here. Let's see who's commenting. All right. So we got Dog. Oh, hold on. Look at this. Taylor Benz. Hi, Greg. Hi, Tay. It's my girl. Taylor, married to the one and only Benzi's Bit, Matt Benz. Personally, Matt, like my dad would say, y'all kicked your coverage. Hey, Tay. It is kind of cool seeing Taylor Benz instead of Taylor Schmidt. Yep, they went and gotten themselves married. I was there. So here's my challenge for this week. We are less than a month away from the election, and I am not going to talk any more about who to vote for, who not to vote for, why I support this guy, why I don't support that guy. Why? Because no one watches this show to get their mind changed on who to vote for. You watch this show hopefully to laugh, hear me say something goofy or stupid or whatever the case is, get a different insight into one of the twist hosts. But what I am going to challenge everyone to do is follow your local politicians. A lot of people right now are frustrated because one thing I hear more often than not is, we have no one good to choose from for president. I don't like either guy. Well, great. Okay, that is what it is. Maybe that's the way you feel. God bless you. But what you can influence is your local politicians, your local congressmen, your state senators, your state congressmen, your governor, your local. When I say local, all the way down to the city. And sometimes you just gotta look at what can I affect on a local level. You know what? It's a lot easier to get a hold of a local politician, your local city mayor, or your local area congressman to affect change. If you feel extremely passionate about an issue, you know what? Call your local congressman, call your mayor, say, you know what, this is something I feel strongly in. How do you feel about it? I guarantee you that one of their people will send you a whole list of the way that they feel about everything. So get involved that way. You know why? Because right now a lot of people feel helpless. One person saying this about COVID, one person saying this, one person saying this about this, one person saying this about this on a national level. And I get it. We feel like we are one person in a country of 350 million. What is our vote going to do? Well, it does matter. I'm not saying it doesn't. It does matter. But if you want to affect more change and you're that passionate about it, don't scream to all high heaven if you don't think you're being heard. Scream to all high heaven on a level where you know you will be heard. I know that back in 2016, when I lived in a different city, the city I was living in, they did the election. And we did a primary, and I actually volunteered to be one of the, to help out. And it wasn't going to affect who was going to be president. It wasn't going to affect who was going to be mayor or congressman or governor in Minnesota, whatever the case was. But I at least felt that I was part of the process. And I felt pretty good about it. And it felt, pretty rewarding because, you know what? Like I said, I didn't change anything, but that wasn't my goal. My goal was just to be part of the process. And, having said that, it did feel good and it would feel good. Now, if you're passionate about something, you can sit around on Facebook and bitch about it. You can sit around on Twitter and bitch about it. You can talk about how this guy's a bum or that guy's a bum. You know what? And maybe you're the one person who might influence one other person. I doubt it. People don't go on Facebook to have their minds changed. They go on Facebook to have their opinions heard, not to change other people's, or not to have their opinions changed, I should say. So if you want to do it, stay off of the social media because it's not doing anything, and get right on the front lines. Talk to those people and find out, you know what? I agree with you, Mr. Mayoral-elect, Mr. Mayoral running person, or congressman, or whoever the case is, him, her, whoever. I agree with your stance on this issue, this issue, this issue. Can I knock on doors for you? Can I go around and, help out in whatever way, put up signs? What do you need me to do because I'd like to help? Because not only do you feel better about yourself, you're actually going to be part of the solution instead of just being part of the flipping problem, which is people sitting around bitching, whining, and not doing anything about it. You're not, so that's my challenge for this week. Get involved. That's all I got. Episode 22 of GBG coming at you next week. And then after that, I'm moving to Beijing, according to Mike. But God bless everyone. Have a great week. Get out there, vote, know who you're voting for, and have fun with the process and be part of the process. Take it easy, folks. GBG out.